Hey everyone, I hope you all had a great week this week. This week we passed a number of critical bills that build on the progress that we made last year with the tax cuts, and we also passed bills to help lower drug costs for seniors and families. Before I get into some of those things, I want to get into some other important things. I want to talk to you a little bit about a bill that I wrote that passed this week by the House of Representatives. My bill was called the Secure Border Communications Act. And this bill, what it's designed to do is improve communication technology for U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers and agents. And what it does is it ensures that they're equipped with secure radios, encrypted communications that they need in order to go out there and execute their mission. Excuse me. My apologies. I hope that's not too loud on the microphone. Listen, making sure that we know who is entering our country and why they're here, it's absolutely essential to our national security. Improving communication along the border, it's a critical component of that mission. So getting this bill passed, it's a great step forward in securing our border, preventing human trafficking, drug trafficking, strengthening our national security. Now, I also chaired my first hearing as the chairman of the Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation Subcommittee, looking at how we can continue to modernize the Coast Guard to go out there and combat cyber and physical threats using new technology. Last week, I had the opportunity to visit with the Coast Guard that are deployed in the Carolinas, helping with hurricane recovery. They play a very significant role in responding to national emergencies and disasters, it's another reason that makes it essential that we make sure that they have the modernized tools that they need to get the mission accomplished. The Coast Guard and Maritime, they are a huge part of our world as Floridians. That's why I'm honored to be named the chairman of the Coast Guard and Maritime Subcommittee. When we think of the presence that this has in Florida, we have ports in Florida from Jacksonville to Port of Canaveral, Fort Pierce, Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Tampa, all of these other places. We have Coast Guard stations across the breadth of Florida. Coast Guard station right in Fort Pierce, where we have them as our own neighbors. Coast Guard air stations, obviously responses to hurricanes is a major issue for Florida. So this committee is a very, very important committee for the state of Florida. I'm honored to be named the chair of that, and I look forward to going out there and working alongside our coasties, working alongside the folks that are out there managing our ports, working with commerce, doing things with buoys that matter to us, buoys and channel markers and things that matter to us as Floridians who love to enjoy our waterways, get out there on the water, go fishing, things like that. It covers so many areas of what we go out there and enjoy. So like I said, I'm very, very happy about this one. It's something that I fought very hard to go out there and pursue, is to be that chairman. So I'm very proud of that actually coming to fruition. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we also passed several bills to reduce the cost of living for American families. For example, we passed 2 bills aimed at lowering prescription drug prices, and what it does is it bans pharmacy gag clauses. Now, if you don't know what a pharmacy gag clause is, currently there are clauses that are in contracts that prevent pharmacists from telling patients whether their prescription drugs would cost more out of pocket or through their insurance. This is a ridiculous practice. I think we can all acknowledge that. So we can't allow this to continue. We need to have people who depend on these medications. We can't have them be deceived or be tricked into paying higher prices than what they should be paying. We also passed 3 bills to build on the great progress that we made last year in cutting taxes, which has led to an unprecedented boom in our economy. You think about what's going on. Lowest unemployment in decades, lowest African American unemployment, lowest Hispanic unemployment, 4% GDP growth quarter after quarter, stock market booming. The biggest thing that I hear from people that put others to work in our community is, Congressman, we can't find enough workers. We can't find enough workers. We can't find enough workers. We should be out there celebrating in the streets right now over this. That's an amazing problem to have, that there's so much work out there right now. People getting bonuses, investments in infrastructure into folks' companies. This is a great time for business, a great time for workers. I'm very proud of what's going on. Now, the bills that we passed this week, they make those critical individual tax cuts permanent. So you want to talk about those individual tax cuts that are made permanent. We're talking about the standard deduction. We doubled the standard deduction. We took it, if you're an individual in your tax filing, from $6,000 to $12,000. If you're married filing jointly, your standard deduction went from $12,000 to $24,000. That's that amount that when you file your taxes, you can knock that amount right off the top. So whether you have, let's say you're married filing jointly and you don't have $24,000 in expenses to go out there and itemize, even if you don't have that, you're still getting to take $24,000 in deductions right off the bat. If you're married filing jointly and you only had $10,000 in standard in deductions, you're getting to take $24,000. If you're single and maybe you only had $6,000 or $7,000 or $10,000 in deductions that you could actually go in there and write off, you're still actually getting $12,000 of deductions right off the top. That's a great thing to lower your taxes. It's one of the things that I'm most proud about. That's something that before we doubled the standard deductions in the tax cuts bill, 70% of our community was already taking the standard deduction. They weren't itemizing because they didn't hit that threshold of where they were itemizing. They didn't have enough to do it, so they're getting the standard deduction. 70% of our community was doing that. Now it's estimated that this number is probably going to go up to 90% of our community is going to now benefit from that standard deduction and it being so much higher. You know, one of the other things we did that's now made permanent, we doubled the child tax credit. So if you have children, you used to enjoy a $1,000 per child tax credit. We doubled that, so now you will have a $2,000 per child tax credit that's completely different than a deduction. That's actually dollar for dollar that you're getting back there on your return. It's a great thing for every family. So if you have 3 children, you just went from having $3,000 in total child tax credit to now having $6,000 in total child tax credit. This is a big deal for all of those families out there that I know across our community. It's more money in your pockets for your groceries, for your mortgage, for your car payments, for your children's education, for your medical expenses, permanently, never going to come to an end. Very proud about these bills that we passed this week. These tax bills go beyond just locking in those middle class and small business tax cuts. When you think about the small business tax cuts, what we're talking about is that now our small businesses, our S-corps, those sole proprietorships that make up the bulk of businesses across our community, they get a 20% haircut off their taxes right off the bat on anything under $315,000. That is a big deal for those small businesses to automatically take that 20% off. And all of the individual rates for all individuals out there, they're all made lower as well. So when we're talking about those cuts, we're talking about saying if you make $35,000 a year, your taxes last year were that you were paying 15%. Now you're only paying 12% when you file this year. If you were making last year $80,000, your taxes last year were that you were paying 25%. Now you're only paying 22%. That's real savings. If you're married, filing jointly, and between 2 people you're making $180,000 a year, your tax bracket used to be that you were paying 28%. Now you're paying 24% and all of those lower rates that we just discussed. That's real savings. That's where people get to go out there and see less coming out of their paycheck, put more money into their children's education, put more money into paying their mortgage, paying their car payment, everything else, all those things we already discussed. Real money in the pocket of individuals. Very proud about that. We also passed a bill that makes saving for retirement or educational expenses easier and more affordable. This bill, it empowers families to create universal savings accounts, a flexible saving account that offers families tax-free earnings and distributions without restrictions, confusions, other penalties associated with savings accounts, so that they can contribute up to $2,500 per year to this with tax-free withdrawals. It also builds on improvements that we made to education savings accounts in the tax bill, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, by allowing families to use their education savings to pay for things like books, school supplies, apprenticeship fees. You can use your education savings to pay for homeschool expenses, student loan debt, and so much more. That means more flexibility for our students, more flexibility for our parents to use their savings on education and invest in the future as they see fit. It's all about freedom. I love it. Another huge part of this is that the same bill, it also removes the age limit on individual retirement accounts. An account used to save for retirement, but which you are currently not eligible to contribute to once you turn 70 and a half. This means that now there will be more flexibility in saving for retirement. The bill also exempts people with less than $50,000 in their retirement accounts from having mandatory payouts that currently start when you turn 70 and a half. This will strengthen the retirement security for retirees across the country, and especially each of those seniors that are in those lowest income seniors across the nation. It is a very, very big deal. Lastly, this tax bill will allow families to withdraw up to $7,500 without penalty from their retirement accounts for a new child, whether by birth or whether it's by adoption. Now, as a father of 3 with a 4th child on the way, I know that having a new child, it's expensive, it's an expensive undertaking, and it's critical that families go out there who decide to have children or adopt a child, that they're able to give that child every bit of nourishment and safety and security that they need in the home to thrive in their early months, their early years. This bill makes it easier for families to do just that. The last of the bills that we voted on this week is called the American Innovation Act. This bill makes it easier, less costly, less burdensome for entrepreneurs to start a new business. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have a dream inside you want to go out there and start a new business, this is the bill for you. Now, one of the greatest parts of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that we passed last year is the massive economic growth that's happened since then. And by providing more deductions for startup costs, so if you want to start a new business, there's more deductions for those startup costs. In fact, quadrupling those deductions. It used to be that they were maxed out at $5,000. Now we're quadrupling that to $20,000. This will help new entrepreneurs create new jobs, start their businesses, invest in their local communities, go out there and continue to strengthen the American economy, go out there and follow their dreams. I love it. Like I said, it's a great piece of legislation. Now together, these bills, they go a long way in saving money for families, helping those struggling to save up for retirement or education or medical emergencies, and promote massive growth for small businesses and startups. We've already seen tremendous growth from our tax cuts last year, and the bills that we passed this week will help accelerate that progress even more. Now, before I wrap up, I want to give an update on the Water Resources and Development Act. You all know this is something that I've been working on literally for well over a year. This is the bill that includes the critical priorities for our community, like the authorization of the EAA Southern Storage Reservoir, the mandatory update of the Lake Okeechobee regulation schedule, the new authorization for the development of the large-scale water filtration technology. It's now been 3 weeks since the House of Representatives, where I sit, has passed for the second time this bill, and yet the Senate still has not taken up the vote. Now, earlier this week, it looked very promising that they were going to vote this week on that, and they still were unable to go out there and undertake that vote. This has to get accomplished. We need the Senate to go out there and take that vote. It's vitally important for our community. I've made clear to the Senate leadership that our community on the Treasure Coast simply cannot wait any longer for this bill to pass. The longer that they drag their feet on this, the more destruction that's going to be wreaked on our community, on our environment, on our economy, and our health by these toxic discharges that we experience, that my family experiences. That's why it's critical that they act now. And I will keep fighting with every fiber of my being until the Senate heads this off, until the Senate goes out there and actually votes on this bill, passes it. It has to happen right now. Until they stop these unnecessary delays, I'm going to go out there and keep fighting them on that. Now, in the meantime, I hope to see you all around this weekend. As always, it is an honor to represent you here in Congress, and I hope you all have a great week. I look forward to seeing you all around. All the best.